joining us to kick things off on this Friday morning. I think it's our first visit in 2020 with Congressman Jodey Arrington. Congressman, good morning. How are you today?
My New Year's resolution is to spend more time on the Chad Hasty Show.
There you go. We like that.
And especially when you give me the full throttle to sound off. I like that. I'm not sure I'm going to let any of your callers call in because I got too much to sound off about. I'll try to be succinct.
Well, there's where do we start here? Where do we begin? I guess we'll start off. How about with some good news? Okay, let's start off with good news, and let's talk about the USMCA trade deal and the latest with that.
Well, it's significant to our farmers in West Texas, but it's a huge win for American manufacturers and producers of all kinds throughout the country. And it passed out of the Senate and will be ratified. And it's been a long time coming. Pelosi sat on it for a year while she was trying to figure out how she could use it to get votes for impeachment. But nevertheless, we have a newly negotiated trade deal with two of our largest trading partners. And it's going to even the playing field in Mexico, which is a good thing because we don't want the giant sucking sound of jobs going to Mexico. But it also opens up markets in Canada, especially with our dairymen, wheat producers, poultry producers. It's a big shot in the arm for folks who've been cut out of that market in the ag space for decades, and they stand to gain close to $300 million a year in additional revenue. So, again, huge deal. The most important trade partners for Texas. NAFTA supported a million jobs. And then you've got China, and then you have Japan, which, by the way, we haven't talked a lot about Japan, $7 billion in reduced tariffs. It's the largest cattle beef market for the United States. And you add these together, and that's 51% of our global export markets, and they have been transformed and not just modified and tweaked, but they have been substantively changed for a much fairer deal for workers here and producers here. And A+, as I've said before, for this president on making America great by making American trade deals fairer for the American people.
Congressman, before we go to break, and we have a couple of breaks that we have to get in here during this half hour, but the other night in the Democrat debate, painfully I watched that, and they didn't want to give the president any credit for the USMCA trade deal, but everyone on stage, other than Bernie Sanders, said that it was a modest improvement. And those were the words they used, a modest improvement. Is it a modest improvement on NAFTA, or is it a big improvement on NAFTA?
Well, 170,000 jobs. The International Trade Commission is an independent, nonpartisan group that quantifies the impact. $60 billion to this economy, 70,000 new auto sector jobs. This is significant. The fact that they played that down is disingenuous at best.
Very good. Congressman, I'm going to put you on hold when we come back. Let's talk about China because things are moving in the right direction there, and then we'll eventually get to that impeachment thing that has moved out of that. Few people have heard about that. We'll get into that as well with you. Congressman Jodey Arrington here on the Chad Hasty Show. We'll be right back. Congressman Jodey Arrington on the phones with us this morning as we kick off a Friday here on the Chad Hasty Show. Congressman, thank you again for joining us. We're talking about deals being made, deals being signed, and one of those deals, and I think it caught a lot of people off guard when it was announced that the president and China came to an agreement on what they're calling phase one of this deal, Congressman.
Well, the president's ability to negotiate and to I think he's the best negotiator in chief we've had probably ever. This is a real strength. And nobody thought, as you said, Chad, that we would get to a substantive agreement, even a phase one with China, in light of the elections. This should tell you how badly the Chinese are hurting over these tariffs. Now, the president has plowed some of the Chinese revenue that they're paying back into the economy, especially with our farmers, to make sure that we smooth out this rough patch so we can get to the other side. Temporary trade relief, if you will. The Chinese have lost millions of jobs in manufacturing. I don't think they have a choice. And the president has won. We've got structural reforms like currency manipulation that's addressed, IP theft that's been addressed. There are certainly more things to tackle, so we're not all the way there, but this is huge. On top of that, Chad, there is this purchase agreement whereby China has agreed to purchase almost twice the amount of United States product that they've ever purchased in the history of our trading relationship with them since the 70s. That is huge. And by the way, agriculture is part of that. I was with the U.S., one of our ambassadors that's part of the trade team. He showed me in the report, if you will, where cotton has a line item in that. So it's going to have a huge impact all the way around this economy, but especially in the ag economies like West Texas, where there's been real pain. No question, there's been pain. The future looks bright. The pastures look greener because this president did what no other president has done, Chad. This is what I love most about this president. This is why I'm most confident about this president. He will not settle for window dressing. He's not a politician. He's a business guy. And he is not going to leave the table until he gets a real substantive deal. That's what this is. And, again, a lot more to come.
Do you think, just, politics-wise here, do you think that the Chinese also looked at the state of the election and went, we should probably go ahead and keep negotiating with the president because we don't think the president's going to go anywhere for a while?
Well, I certainly think they've probably changed their outlook since this impeachment sham. I think they're all kind of, unfortunately, the world is making a mockery out of our Congress. Probably not the first time they've done that, but this is maybe the worst of it. But, that may be somewhat of a factor. But I do think even though using the blunt force of tariffs is not always ideal, I think the president has he's been able to stay the course. Again, the political pressure on this side, and I've seen it. I've been in meetings with him, and I know past presidents have felt the same political pressure. I'm talking about the various business interests that are being hurt by it stateside. And they just end up giving up and walking away, and we have a little modest sort of tweak here and there. This president has tried to smooth out things for folks stateside, but told everybody, I'm not leaving because these folks are the biggest existential threat to the future of our country, the rise of the red dragon. And they have risen as the fastest growing economy, second largest only the U.S., on the backs of American consumers and at the expense of American manufacturers and producers. This may be, other than the courts, the president's greatest legacy that he leaves for our great country.
Congressman, we've got one more break that we have to take. When we come back, we'll talk about impeachment and also want to get your views on what's going on with the Iranian situation as well. That's Congressman Jodey Arrington here on the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO. We'll be right back. We've got a few minutes left here with Congressman Jodey Arrington here on the Chad Hasty Show. And Congressman, before we move on to a couple of different subjects, we had a drive-by caller who was wondering more specifics on what's good for the cotton farmers and all the trade negotiations with USMCA, with China, specifically for the cotton producers out there. What are the big wins?
Well, we have half of the trade-related jobs in Texas 19, or in my district, are related to NAFTA partners, or USMCA now, Mexico and Canada. A lot of that was the market certainty because most of that impact on ag was dairy, wheat, et cetera. On China, we've lost half of our market share, which is our second largest market. I'm talking about our cotton market. So input costs are up, prices are depressed on account of that, and then you got this big old whopping hole in the market there in China. You're talking about them producing almost twice as much ag product. That includes cotton. It's going to take some time for it to hit the books. But when we get there, it may take a season to get there. And the president's committed, as am I. I just wrote a letter to Sonny Perdue, Secretary of Agriculture, saying we've got to keep that bridge of trade relief from the fallout until we get to the other side of this deal. But it's significant for our cotton producers and for producers of all kinds throughout Texas and the country. But our guys are going to be impacted in a positive way. We just have to keep them in the game until then. Times are tough, no question, but long term, these things are going to give us a whole lot more of a shot at prosperity in West Texas and in ag economies like it around the country.
I guess I'll just ask you for this impeachment stuff, Congressman. I know it's moved away from the House. It's in the Senate now. Just as someone who has been involved in this process, just what are your overall thoughts as you've watched this? And I'm sure there have been moments where you've stood back and just watched and seen how this is playing out by the Democrats.
Well, I can give you bullet points here. Number one, it's a loser politically for the Democrats, but it's a bigger loser for our country. So I can't celebrate that because weaponizing impeachment and having that as a new precedent, as a new normal for the swamp, is bad for America. It's not a Republican or Democrat thing. It's just terrible that we're going to see this now. We're going to see many reruns of this on account of what the Democrats did. That was the first partisan impeachment in the history of this country. And by the way, it's the first time they've ever done a vote after we took out a terrible, one of the worst terrorists, and then to have a vote to imply that we did the wrong thing or that we should apologize for taking out somebody that's got 600 American soldier blood on his hands. That's never happened before. So we're seeing partisanship at all new lows. And it's a sham. There's no credibility to this. They kicked it off without even reading the transcript of the conversation between Zelensky and Trump. The articles of impeachment, what are they? They're not crimes. They're just politically manufactured. This whole thing is a partisan ploy to discredit the president. Those are my thoughts.
Did when Speaker Pelosi, she had told people that this was a solemn, very sad process for America, and then she's handing out victory pins to other Democrats. Is that mixed messaging on her part? I mean, is that how did you take that?
Well, I don't think she is being authentic in her grief. Stricken moments. I think she is delighting in what she thinks is dismissing and discrediting this president, and that's the focus. Now, they walked the impeachment articles to the Senate. It looked like a parade of fools. It looked like the last hurrah of the circus in the House, and it was silly. It was absolutely political theater at its worst. And look, I think the American people, I've seen the data, I've seen the polls, and the independents are dropping out. They think it's a waste of time and money, even if you think the president did something inappropriate or said something inappropriate. Look, the president's not a politician. He speaks directly. He says what we all think. He didn't do anything impeachable. Quite frankly, I've talked to him personally about it. His motive was to make sure we didn't give money to one of the most corrupt countries until they root out graft and corruption. He wanted to know that this President Zelensky was serious. And by the way, Zelensky was on the phone saying, I want to drain the swamp here like you're doing it in America. So he just wanted to make sure that he meant what he said. That means leave no stone unturned, and nobody is off limits, including former vice presidents, which I think everybody's been very suspect. Didn't get the scrutiny that it deserves. So all around, it's a political loser. It's a loser for our country, but maybe we can do some business in the House this year, unlike last year where we did nothing except basically force them, for political reasons, to pass USMCA, which is good for the country.
Congressman, as always, appreciate your time. Let's visit again soon and find out what some of those other issues are that'll be coming up in the House this year. We do appreciate your time, and we'll visit with you later.
I look forward to it. Good to be with you. Happy New Year, Chad.
Happy New Year.
God bless. Go West Texas.
That's Congressman Jodey Arrington here on the Chad Hasty Show.